Hello and welcome to the Passion Driven Pioneers interview series. I'm your host, John Channon, and today I'm joined by Robbie Harrell, who is the founder and CEO of Minnesota Ice. Robbie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Would you like to kick us off with a brief background as to who you are, what you do, and the business that you're in?
Yeah, so my name's Robert Harrell, and I'm the CEO and founder of Minnesota Ice. So I originally started my ventures in a kind of small business community working for local paintball companies around the Twin Cities and kind of excelled at that. And then from there, kind of had this itch to start my own company. I was always working for small companies, and it was really a lot of fun to see how you could make significant changes in an organization that was rather small rather than, working for a big company.
Cool. Well, you mentioned that you kind of had that itch to get out and start your own business. So what was that, initial spark that led you to take that entrepreneurial leap?
Yeah, I'd been working for a lot of other entrepreneurs and be able to see the abilities of, the jobs that they could provide, as well as, the support of the community was kind of like, hey, how do I do this? And, where do I get going? So I originally started working for the paintball company, as I'd mentioned, and from there really kind of had excelled into how do I adapt and, grow with inside of this. So then I got into point of sales machine development. So, basic, kind of network computered cash registers, inventory management. And as I kind of grew out of that, I said, I want to be surrounded more by people rather than computer systems. And so that's kind of where this ice thing came about. I was working for an ice carver delivering ice sculptures in college. And, he said, hey, how do we partner together to get this thing going and, really kind of excel at it?
And ice sculptures aren't the only thing that you guys do, is it?
No. So we originally started with the company. It was originally called Minnesota Ice Sculptures. And so we were only doing ice sculptures, but it turns out you can only sell so many ice sculptures. So what we really found was, hey, what else can we do with the ice that we make? And so that's when we kind of saw this niche business of the craft cocktail ice. We now distribute that product all throughout the nation. And then we also got into selling ice blocks. So that's the raw material we turn into the ice sculptures. We started selling those around the country, picked up a few clients. It's a very niche business. And so, as that kind of snowballed and we actually got awarded the 2018 Super Bowl contract, which we did some really big ice sculptures for, you kind of learn that you can't solely, probably rely on one product line, and so you want to stay within your lane and, not go out and start doing other things, but you also want to kind of look at it and say, what is within this business sphere that we've created of ice products. And that's where the blocks came about and the cocktail ice and the sculptures, where we were founded. And then we got into the gas station ice. And while beneficial that we're still in it today and, we've come to grow and love it, it's very interesting to go from a very niche product to a very commodity product where, it's very price competitive. It's very capital intensive. Not that the other businesses aren't capital intensive, but, it's very competitive on volume and everything else and really turning and, moving those bags of ice.
Yeah, and then also keeping them in inventory because I know on a hot day here in Minnesota during the summer, sometimes it's hard to find some ice if you're going out
It
on.
really can be. Yeah. And that's one of the things we really pride ourselves on. So we're one of the most, more expensive packaged ice companies out there. We produce 25 tons a day, but, a lot of our competitors produce 200, 300 tons a day, which is, really crazy to think that there's that much demand for ice, even just here in Minnesota or even just the Midwest, that there's multiple people out there making 200, 300 tons of ice a day.
So many people believe that, entrepreneurs basically come up with this great idea and they just kind of start a business and it all starts going great all the time. What are some of the misconceptions about running a business and getting a business up and off the ground?
It's never going to go right. There will be your days that you have your great ups, your big wins. I mean, from, even just getting our first contract with the Minneapolis Boat Show, we made a life-size Malibu VTX towboat out of ice. And so this is like a wakeboarding boat. It's 20 feet long, 8 feet wide. We totally underbid that project. And when we underbid that project, it was really tough because you start leaning on resources and going, hey, we thought it was going to be here. It turns out our costs are up here. And, you start having to pull together friends, family, resources to go, hey, how do we, we were in the thick of it at this point, and so how do we kind of adapt to make this as beneficial as possible so we don't lose too much money? So I remember I had called some friends and, promised them a 6-pack of beer and a pizza, right? If they could help me tear this thing down at the end. And luckily they came through, but, you know, it's not an easy thing to get started. There's a lot of systems that you have to build. And at the end of the day, you have to trust your gut. So if you've got a good gut reaction, you really want to trust that and move forward with decisions on those. It's going to be very painful along the way, but you just got to trust in your vision and where you can go with it.
Well, and I trust that you probably took away a lot from that experience that you had with the big ice boat.
Right. Yes. And, when you reflect back on that, the biggest thing that you can look at is, hey, we not only did we deliver a product that the client was really happy with, but we also were able to, learn from our mistakes. And that's where, the first 1 to 3 years of your business, it's unless you've done something like this in the past, I mean, I don't think I paid myself until year 4 or year 5. It was doing side hustle jobs. I was still doing some point of sales machine consulting. And so, the first few years of that business was tough. And, when you weren't a previous ice sculptor, you were just delivering ice sculptures, there was a lot of nuances that we weren't aware of. And so you really want to make sure that you've built in enough margin to still be competitive, but, to apply overhead, expenses with it. You want to be able to apply, a factor of, be able to go buy new machinery or expand. And, and that can be the tough part, is making those decisions and how to cost calculate and the rest of that. But that was a really good learning lesson coming out of it. And I said, hey, I don't ever want to work that hard again if we're not going to make money.
Yeah, no kidding. You mentioned working a side hustle while you were getting this up and going and not paying yourself. Tell us a little bit about how you maintain balance, work-life balance as a business owner.
You
And what was
know,
it like in those early days?
yeah, you really live and breathe your company when you're getting going. It can be such a weight on your shoulders. You really think about how, hey, you got to get the website done. You got to get the social media platforms running, the logos, and these lists can become huge burdens. But if you prioritize them and then you slowly check off the lists and you allocate your time right, you can know that, hey, there's huge lists of things for us to get done, to get going, or to even continue on. We look at our stages of growth from where we were when we first started to where we are today, and then where we're going in the future. There's still a lot of things for us to do, but you just have to understand that, working hard isn't always what it's about. It's about what you're working on. And so it's important that, you're really looking at it and saying, am I working in the business today, which is really where I was the first, 3 to 5 years of the business, to am I working on the business? And so, and then it's what are we working on? Is it important that I go out and deliver an ice sculpture today? Well, if for some reason somebody didn't show up for work, yeah, I can go do that. But what's really important is that I'm setting my team up for success with the systems we have in place. And that, I do get some outside time away from work because otherwise I'm not performing at my highest.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. You mentioned kind of looking at where you're at today. So if you look back at where you are today, are you where you thought you would be at this point in time?
For the most part, I am, which is really cool to think about. There's some further automation projects that I thought would have been done a lot, quicker. But I think if we were able to get, if COVID wasn't a thing in the world, I think we would have been there, today. But, COVID was really tough on, the Minnesota Ice organization in the sense that we sell our sculptures to bar or to different events. We sell our cocktail ice to different bars and restaurants, and the packaged ice, goes out to different gas stations. So when that hit in March, bars and restaurants shut down. So there goes one of our main revenue streams. And when events shut down, there goes another main revenue stream. So that was kind of our slow period of the year. And so I think if we were able to, erase COVID out of the history, we would be where, I could see us being at today, which is really kind of exciting. We've implemented a lot. We've grown a lot in our new facility and, crossing our fingers, but I think we're going to get another facility here soon, which will be cool.
Well, that's exciting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really exciting. Cool. So now we talked about kind of where you're at today, right? If you
Yep.
were to look about 5 years from now, right, can you give us a glimpse maybe into some of the future plans and goals that you have for your business?
Yep. And so, Minnesota is, the state is largely known for being frigid cold. And so when I think about that, the thought process has kind of become as, hey, that's why Minnesota ice sculptures made sense. Why would you buy your ice sculpture from anybody but a Minnesota guy? And when I think about our ice products, we ship these products all throughout the nation, New York, Florida, Texas. These are really big markets for us. And as I continue to think about the ice that people consume and use at mass volume, the cocktail ice is great, for us. You've got a nice old fashioned sitting on a nice cube. These cubes are extremely clear and, won't dilute your drink. And I think about that in a larger sense, and I say, why can't that just be the ice we use overall? And so why can't we have a higher quality product that consumers consume less for? They will pay a slight premium for it, but instead of buying one bag, how do we buy three? Instead of buying three bags, how do we buy one bag? And I think there's really something interesting and a cool thought process there of, where the next 5 years will bring us into, basically introducing these new products to the market that the mass consumers can, utilize. They're more energy friendly, when it comes to manufacturing. And when you consume less, that means when you go to that gas station, you're out of ice less.
Yeah, and this business that you talk about, Minnesota ice, in the 1800s, they were cutting ice chunks out of the lakes and shipping those
Yep.
elsewhere. So
Yeah.
it's really cool. And I appreciate the concept of, how can we get higher quality ice, but have people use less, right? Because water conservation up here in the land of 10,000 lakes is very important for all of us. So I think that's awesome.
It really is. And that's where, as we continue to work on our, kind of community outreach programs, we do a Minnesota Ice Festival every year. And unfortunately, with the El Nino this year, we had to cancel it. But the community was still very supportive of us, kept the ice bars going. And actually, even Ecolab this year sponsored an ice bar series in St. Paul, which we were very grateful for. And I think there's ways that we can, as we look forward, we can even work with the community on providing cleaner lakes, and really kind of work on water quality up here as well, which could be really cool.
So you talked a little bit about innovation before and some of the things you've done. What are some of the ways you remain adaptable and open to change?
If you're not open to change at your business, you're going to run into a lot of problems. Each and every day, from systems are changing, technology is changing, and really the ice industry, the manufacturing technology hasn't changed a lot. But if you even look at the last 12 to 18 months with AI being introduced to things, you can do things so much faster, quicker, and easier these days just by using this as an assistant and as a tool. And that's really where, as the market and us as a society grow, you need to be ready to adapt to that. But then when you hire on a new employee, or you've got an employee brings a problem to you but then provides a solution, you really want to make sure that you're open and willing to give something a try. And that's one of the biggest things I've learned is I'm not the industry expert here. It's a group of us that are the industry experts. And while I don't always agree with everybody, we're always willing to give something a shot. And that's really important because if you don't let other people on your team's voice be heard, or you're willing to let them give them a shot, it almost comes down as, you're a micromanager or you're not respecting their opinion. And there's a fine balance there on how, you let them go out and try things and in what things make sense, So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really informative. Knowing that this show, right, is directed at people who might be in their first few years of business and entrepreneurs or people thinking about getting into business, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share or words of wisdom for our audience?
Yeah. For anybody that's looking to get into entrepreneurship, definitely reach out to your friends, reach out to your family, see what resources are out there for people that are more industry experts. For me, reflecting back on it, if I was going to get into the ice industry some more, or, was going to be somebody to first get into it, and you could apply this for any industry, I would definitely be going more out of town to understand, how manufacturing works, or how, this segment of business works prior to starting my business. Our business professors at the University of St. Thomas always taught us, do your research, figure out your costs and the rest of that. And I was just so eager to get going. We got to get going. We got to, work on this stuff. That I think had we done some more research, we probably would have missed a number of steps. But you got to be careful because you almost need to go into starting your business with a pair of blinders on, right? You're peeking out the blinder sunglasses, and because you got to be a little naive with things, and you got to be open to trying things, and you know try to keep the thought of failure at the background, and don't ever look at it as failure. Look at it as a good, learning lesson. I think about how much money got spent on these college classes, and while there were great learning opportunities, and I partook in most of those learning opportunities, it's important to realize too that, these mistakes, while might be costly, like the boat, for example, it was a good learning opportunity for me to improve the business. That boat, what we charged back then was a very, very small amount, or, it was a large amount at the time. That same boat would probably cost 7 times as much today. Just knowing all the costs, knowing that that material could get converted to something else that would make just as much money with a lot less risk. And so there's just a lot you can learn, and you just can't be, concerned about just jumping off the bridge and going for it. It's just life. As long as you're not doing anything dangerous, nobody's going to get hurt or injured, and you can always move on from it. Don't sign bad deals, right? Don't go out and get a loan shark deal at 18%. I tried that once. It was interesting. But just figure out ways to stretch, if you need funding, stretch those pennies thin, figure out ways to, whether you buy something, instead of buying it new, try to find it on eBay, try to find it, in different ways that you can really stretch all of your dollars as thin as possible to make sure that your funding goes all the way. Because the biggest thing you can do is overinvest, try to buy the best of everything, and it just doesn't ever pan out. You want to really try to, bootstrap your operation for as long as you can to ensure that, you're not getting ahead of yourself and taking on too much debt. And, and be mindful, the COVID experience was something that none of us really had ever been through. And it was a good reminder that when you diversify your product lines, it's very important that, you're kind of in these different markets, because without us being into the gas station or packaged ice world, we really would not have made it through this. Even with government assistance and the rest of that, it would have been extremely, extremely tough for us to keep everything going.
Listen, I really appreciate you sharing that. And thank you so much for your time today, Robbie.
Of course. Happy to help. And I appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, it was great meeting you, learning more about your entrepreneurial journey. And then to everyone watching, I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.